Thanks for having us out to your home. What should I call you now? Congressman, Mr. O'Rourke, Beto is on your signs. What do you prefer?
Beto is great. Beto works.
Beto, this feels a lot like 2018. You have the momentum. The fundraising numbers recently were strong. You outraised Governor Abbott. Polls show it's a single-digit race. What concerns you most going into the final weeks of this campaign?
I feel really good. We've successfully made the case that Abbott has had 8 years, and for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to get the job done on reducing property taxes or improving teacher pay at our schools or fixing the grid or reducing gun violence, where we now lead the nation in a number of mass shootings in our schools. And I don't think he intends for these things to happen, but he's just been unable or unwilling to make the decisions necessary to change them. And people in Texas now want to vote for change and something better.
We got a plane passing us here, just in case our viewers can hear that. 4 years ago in the U.S. Senate race, you swept all the major metro areas, but you had trouble in rural Texas. You made another effort at rural Texas during this campaign. Are there any specific counties you think that actually might flip and go your way this time?
I'll tell you what, visiting places like Montague County or being in Bonham or Sherman, I find that there are more things that unite us than would otherwise divide us, and that's between big cities and smaller towns, and even between Republicans and Democrats. A big example of this is funding for public education. Teachers are underpaid everywhere in Texas, certainly in Dallas, but these rural communities represented by Republicans, teachers are down $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 a year. And when we show up and talk about fully funding our public school educators, giving them more classroom time with their students by canceling the STAR test, we find that we have common ground and agreement, and we're going to win many more of those voters, including Republicans and certainly independents in these smaller rural counties. We do that and also produce the turnout that we know we can produce in Dallas, Denton, Collin, and Tarrant. We're going to win this election.
The suburbs, Fort Bend County outside Houston, Collin County outside Dallas, Williamson outside Austin. We saw some reporting the other day that you are ahead in those counties and that Governor Abbott, the incumbent, is behind there. Are there any counties that you have to win that you did not win in 2018 that you have to win next month?
Well, we certainly have to do better. As well as we did in 2018, we still came up 2.6% down to Ted Cruz at the end of the night. So, some people in Dallas may say, well, this is a blue county, and it may not matter if I vote because Beto's going to win it anyhow. Those folks need to remember that their votes travel all the way up to the very top of the ticket, no matter where they're cast from. Same is true from more rural or suburban counties like Denton and Collin. Those suburbs, while in play, are so important, not just to win the county, but to win the state. If we see the turnout that we expect, given what we're seeing at our rallies and our events, the number of people who've donated, the tens of thousands of people who are volunteering, I am confident that we are going to win. And the base that we built in 2018, when I became the first Democrat to win Tarrant County, for example, going back to 1994, we add to that in this election with people who want change, want something better, want these divisions bridged, and Texans coming together to do great things again.
Let's talk about abortion for a moment. Republicans say that you support abortion up until the time of birth. Is that the case?
It's not the case, but it is part and parcel of Greg Abbott's strategy to try to scare people about his opponent because he doesn't have much of a track record to stand on. So whether it's this issue or issues about our borders or issues about law enforcement, if we look at his record after 8 years, Texas is at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis because he has attacked women and their right to choose. We have chaos at our border with Mexico, and we have homicides on the rise in Texas because he's ignored law enforcement and signed permitless carry into law. My position on reproductive health care freedom, which is that every woman should be able to make her own decision about her own body, her own future, her own health care, that is supported by the vast majority of our fellow Texans, including Republicans in this state. And the standard that I want to make sure that we return to is Roe versus Wade, a standard that stood the test of time for nearly 50 years and was originally won by Texas women, including Linda Coffey, one of the attorneys for Jane Roe, who still lives in Dallas, Texas today.
You said the other day, though, in Lubbock, I believe, that you'd be open to consensus, reaching a compromise with Texas Republicans if you're elected. Is there an abortion law or restriction that you would tolerate?
The only way that we're ever going to make progress in this state, in this democracy, in this country, is by finding common ground with people with whom we don't always see eye to eye. So whatever the issue is, whether it's reducing inflation, improving the ability to have a high-paying job in Texas, fully funding education, or restoring protection for women to make their own decisions about their own body and their own future, I am going to, by definition, have to work with Republicans and Democrats for that matter and find positions that we can agree on. That's going to involve consensus, and though it's a dirty word among some, it's also going to necessitate compromise. But I think we will take that over the extremism and the failure that we have after 8 years of Greg Abbott. A balanced government comprised of Democrats and Republicans, I think, is going to be the cure for a very divided state at this moment. And it's going to allow us to move forward on big things that we can all agree on.
As far as an actual limit, though, for 24 weeks, I believe, is viability. Is there 20 weeks? Is there a line in the sand that you have that you wouldn't go beyond on abortion?
Well, I remind us that we are starting at a total abortion ban, the most extreme in America, that Greg Abbott signed into law last year, that begins at conception with no exception for rape or incest. So there is a lot of room to improve. And I'm reminded of the fact that 78% of Republicans in the state of Texas disagree with this total abortion ban. My goal remains returning to the Roe versus Wade standard, won by Texas women more than 49 years ago. But I'm going to work with anyone, anytime, anywhere to do better for Texas women. And where we are right now could not be any worse for them.
Let's talk about accountability in Uvalde. You obviously have support from a lot of the victims' families there and their parents. Besides calling a special legislative session, if you were governor right now, what else would you do right now to help that community heal?
Listen, I'm going to bring Republicans, Democrats, Uvalde parents, Santa Fe High School parents, those survivors of gun violence in Texas around the table to make sure that we do what is common sense. Defend the Second Amendment and do a far better job of protecting the lives of those in our lives. So things like a universal background check, a red flag law, raising the age of an AR-15 purchase from 18 to 21, which it's not just Democrats who agree with these issues. It's Republicans like the mayor of Fort Worth right now who has voiced her support for this. These are things that we can get done. And whether it's calling...
But how would you get that done in a Republican legislature, though? Because the legislature's not going to be flipping.
You know, I think the only person standing in the way of getting these things done right now is Greg Abbott. There is nearly universal support for those three ideas: raising the age, red flag laws, universal background check. Even folks who will never vote for me can agree on at least that much. But when you have a governor who, after 20 weeks since Uvalde, has refused to call a special session, though he did so on any number of other culture war issues, he won't do it on the most important issue, which is protecting and saving the lives of our children in a state where gun violence is now the leading cause of death for kids and teenagers. As governor, I'm going to take the action that he has refused to take. And yes, again, it's going to require bringing Republicans and Democrats around the table. One of my understandings of our democracy is that no one person or party will ever get their way all the time on every issue. It's gonna involve conversation, listening, learning, and ultimately moving forward. And as governor, that's what I'm going to do. And there really isn't a more important issue in front of us than protecting our kids. Amy and I here in El Paso are raising 3 kids, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school. They're well aware that they are no safer in their classrooms today than those kids in Uvalde were on May 24th, 2022. Literally nothing has changed since then. And their eyes are on us. They only get a voice in this election through our votes. And we all have to vote for change and vote for the lives of our children.
Beto, we're just a few miles from the border. You probably know exactly where, 1 or 2 miles, if that. Is the Biden administration doing enough right now to protect that border?
No, nobody is. We're not seeing the leadership from the administration, from those in Congress.
What would you do? Would you continue Governor Abbott's policies, expand on those, or what?
I wouldn't, because Greg Abbott has also failed. $4 billion after he began Operation Lone Star. We're not seeing fewer encounters at our border, as he promised we would. we're actually seeing more. It's another one of his failures. Rising inflation, rising crime, and more chaos at the border. These stunts of busing migrants haven't helped either. What we need are solutions. So you ask what I would do. I'd make sure that if you come to this country, you follow our laws, and that our laws reflect and follow our values. So for example, a Texas-based guest worker program where we bring Republicans and Democrats around the table, work with our federal partners, make sure that if you want to come here to work a job in El Paso or North Texas for that matter, for which we cannot find someone born in this state who will actually do the job, that there's a safe, legal, orderly path for you to be able to come to this country. And important is legal and orderly. Right now, we don't have that. Same is true if you want to seek asylum or join a family member right now. It was Ronald Reagan, the last president who presided over any kind of comprehensive immigration reform. We need to take that seriously, and no state is better prepared to lead on this issue than Texas. I mean, we understand this, we live this, we have the experience and the expertise. So let's stand up and push this country to do the right thing. Otherwise, we're going to continue with the status quo, and that doesn't work for anybody.
A couple last questions for you. Texas is going to have a $27 billion surplus next year. What would you spend that money on?
Let's make sure that we fix the grid. Let's make sure that we pay our teachers enough to not have to work a second or a third job to make ends meet. Let's invest in the infrastructure that we need. You know, going into rural communities in North Texas, folks can't get online. Let's make sure that we extend broadband and internet access to everyone who needs it. And then most importantly, perhaps for homeowners and even renters, let's reduce property taxes in the state of Texas. We are pricing people out of their homes right now, and it's making it harder for them to be able to stay and live in Texas. I want to make this the best state in which to work, to live, to raise your family, and to thrive. And reducing these increasing property taxes will allow us to do that.
Well, how do you reduce the property taxes? You mentioned Medicaid, you know, finally expanding Medicaid in the state, but that would bring, what, $6 to $10 billion? We need a lot more than that to lower what I'm paying every month.
If we expand Medicaid and then in addition increase the share of state funding for public education, we can bring down what you're paying in property taxes right now. Under Greg Abbott, we sent a lot of state mandates down to the local level, to the school boards, to the county governments, to City Hall, without any resources to pay for these things. And so those local governments have had to raise our property taxes. I want the state to take back more of its fair share of these responsibilities and funding. And when we do, the local property taxpayer can pay less. It becomes more affordable to stay in our homes, more affordable to buy a home in the first place, and more Texans can thrive right where they are right now.
Let me ask you a business question before we wrap things up. The Texas Miracle, if you're elected governor, how do you maintain the fantastic growth and investment that businesses have made in this state over the last 20 years? But there are some businesses and Republicans say, oh, that you know, you're going to change things, you're against right to work laws, and you're going to overturn that. What's your plan?
I'm the only candidate in this race who has started a small business and met a payroll every week and hired dozens of people in this community to work high wage, high value, high skilled jobs. I know that it's not Greg Abbott or any Republican or Democratic politician for that matter who has created the business success that we have here. It is those small business owners, it is their employees who have created this extraordinary success and value. And I want to make sure that we don't jeopardize that. That means we got to fix the grid. We got to reduce the cost of doing business. We have to stand strong against an income tax in the state of Texas. And we have to stop the extremism that is driving away talent and workers from Texas. This total abortion ban, for example, is going to kill the small business success that we've enjoyed for so long in Texas. So restoring rights to women, to workers, to people in this state to be able to thrive right here in Texas, that's going to do well for all of us, and it's going to make this small business success even greater going forward.
Thanks for having us to El Paso. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.